What's up? Hey VHR, just wanted to go ahead and go over some of the adjustments that we need to make for the Imperator and especially during phase 4 and a couple of other phases. Just to point out a couple of things. So the topics that I'm going to go over include tanking as far as both of the ads and how we wanted to start deal with them, and a couple of things that I picked up last night, proper branding handoff, and also phase 4 positioning. So that way we have a little bit more of a structure of what we're trying to do versus where it was kind of chaos last night, even though we did get to, what, 13%, right? 13% on like 40, 50 wipes so far. I'm completely proud of that. Everything on Heroic too. Very, very proud of that. It's a really great job. We need to keep up on that focus and just keep on being determined and knock it out. So that way we can transition into a couple of mythical kills before we end up, having the Black Route Foundry come out and start working our way there. So tanking with both ads. Some of the elements that I picked up last night is we'll go ahead and use black as the Imperator, okay? And then we'll use yellow as the tank. Whatever tank is facing directly with him, upon the aberration being casted on that tank, the aberration will spawn behind where the tank is positioned like so. Because what he wants mechanically, and this is the elements of the game, what he wants mechanically is to have something attacking the blind side where there's 0 armor protection. So what you have to do is, and I started doing throughout last night's attempt, was I was kind of waiting for the cast. I would turn and engage that target. And what we need to do is whatever, since, for example, we're going to see ice take the MOC a majority of the time, if not all the time, is what we want. So that way it's always one person and he's always doing it correctly. What we can have is the MOC runs off, the aberration is cast, I can turn, I throw as many attacks as I can into it promptly, and then kind of bring the two of them together while range works on the target. So for the tanks, let's just try and do the best we can that whenever we have it and we know the cast is coming up for the Arcane Aberration, that we're putting ourselves in a position that puts the aberration just slightly ahead of range and DPS. So that way what we can do is upon its casting, he does the cast, the aberration spawns, it's always right there as often as we can. And this is going to fall on me a majority of the time, but this is just a good heads up for every one of the tanks that get a chance to participate into it. Second element that I wanted to go ahead and talk about, when he is up here on phase 2 or transition 2, and he's also here on transition phase 3 into transition 2, and this is phase 2 into transition 1 into phase 3. What we want to do is make sure that the tanks are always in a position, so we use yellow as a tank again, that as the ads come out, they're constantly being picked up as the melee and range engage on our mages, right? So always purple and blue, good to keep the reference, right, as far as the coloring. And then just bring them down into here, so that way we can get the proper grouping up to burn real quick, deal with the explosions, and adjust. But phase 3 is different, right, because we have one tank over here working, and we have another tank over here working the Varian Reaver. Okay, so once the Reaver goes down, then naturally it can come, but we're going to always need a DPS to assist, if not maybe 2 over here. Now that might cut into us a little bit. We'll see how 1 does, and 1 worked out pretty well. We used Valid for our last couple of attempts where we got to 16 and 13%, and it worked out just fine. There was enough of them going down, and they were doing enough in here to do it. We could also have, for example, whatever damage dealer that we have going on here, it was Valid before, right? Valid could sit there and move down and assist here once the other tank comes in because the Reaver dies, right? So we can do something like that. Our general spread, too, remember, it's like 30 yards within here, okay? So everybody can kind of be loosely grouped in this section, and then you get targeted. You can move to here and here. Don't run out and do all that. That's not necessary, okay? What we want to do is just make sure that we're in a position that you can still be healed as far as where you're at to what you're trying to achieve, which is minimizing the amount of times you get hit by it if you can, like with a speed boost, for example. Or in turn, with the interrupts that we're putting on the targets too, that'll help us also. It might even be necessary, for example, for us to practice putting an interrupt or 2 on each one of the mages while we burn it down. So yeah, that's going to split a little bit of our damage, but if it minimizes the amount of damage going out from their targeting, for example, that could help too, but I don't know if we're going to need to do that. Really just upon you being targeted and you're moving, whether it be here or here, out of the group, so that way you take the damage there and there, is you can use a defensive, you can keep moving, you use a speed boost, you know, trying to minimize the impact of it as much as possible. So that way what we do is we get the mage down, and then we transition up to here. Now that we have both of the tanks engaged at this point and we have the adds, do not blow the adds up. I want the same DPS, so it'll be me and the tanks and Valid, for example, or that one person that I assign to it to work on the adds. Everybody else needs to focus their damage into trying to get him down, especially multi-targeting cleave-like action. So that way what we do is we get, eventually they all go down and then we're in good shape there, all right? So the boss comes down because we're into phase 4 now. We've done awesome. We're at 25%, right? So the big 2.5. It's a good benchmark because that's the final phase that we're going into. We have a whole bunch of actions going on, and this is where I wanted to highlight these 2 points here, branding and phase 4. All right, so with branding handoff, what you want to make sure that you do is that if it's in the melee group, what you want to make sure you're doing is that you're properly by one getting it down to there. So that way it can be handed off into the bigger group where AoE heals and everything else are going on. So practice this throughout each one of the phases as far as the handoff. Then, when it's at 4, you need to make sure that you're in a position to get it over to the hunters. Now, if you can do it at 3, do it at 3. That's fine. The hunters are smart. They can disengage. They've been practicing a lot, and they're in really good shape. But it has to be to them by 4 on phase 1. It has to be to them by 4 on phase 2. It has to be to them by 6 on phase 3. And then phase 4, guess what? It's 4 2 times, right? So we got to make sure that we're looking for that and we're ready to do that, because branding is clipping one of our hunters or both of our hunters, and then that completely takes out the function of what we're trying to do as a team when it comes to handling that, okay? Now, for the phase 4 positioning, right? So what we've got going on is Imp is here. There's probably a couple of, there's a couple of the little ads all around and whatnot. And we're trying, we're managing them. The tanks have got it. Tanks need to be at a north position with their back to that section there. So we'll use these 2 to represent the 2 tanks doing their thing, right? So at the point since Ice is going to be yellow as our example since that's what the video shows. Ice, when he gets the MOC, needs to make sure that he's running over this way because all of us are over here. And since it's a 360-degree explosion, this minimizes the total area that's going to be coming down. What we've done is we took 360 degrees. We've made about a 45-degree angle or so, 60-degree angle worth of exposure. So there's going to be a lot less orbs coming through when the rest of them are all going that way out of the stage because we're up here at the top of it. And we're just trying to work that area there more than anything and minimize the amount of attack that's coming through into that area, okay? So then he comes back, and we're back to what we're doing as far as swaps. It's like I don't have a script or something. It's all improv. So what we've got now is we're back. We're doing our proper transition based on the damage that's going on, and we might actually even want to throttle down as far as when we taunt. Maybe even taunt like around a 5 rotation just to keep the spikes to a minimal because of the amount. But here's what we got, and this is really, if you watch the video from like 12 minutes on, or I'm sorry, like 10 minutes, 11 minutes on, and you start seeing the aberration. Aberration spawns, right? So we kind of want to be at like an angle to the side, so that way what we get is aberration. Boom, it's here, right? And then we can kind of turn and properly put it where it's all like so. So we got a nice little tight package of everything right here, right? And what we've got is, I was saying a triangle at first, but it's more of how our damage is going into it that represents a triangle. What we really want for a shape is more of a rectangle. We kind of want to use this area for everybody to be in with hunters and heals across the bottom, right? So that way brandings can be brought back and handled properly. Heals will have the whole area covered. So we're definitely going to want a healer to take one corner. And we're going to definitely want a healer to take the other corner. And then, for example, like single target heals, shields, like just as an example, Skyhammer and Yulia. And then all of our AoE heal, base healing, multi-target healing would be here. So like Cortani and Trish in the middle, right? So that way what we've got is this great base of coverage of 60 yards where we're taking care of everybody the best we can. Because we have to create this shape. We have to have this shape. If we're not in this area here, what we're going to have is people over here and over here and over here. Or maybe we'll be too compact, so that way when Nova goes off, we end up getting killed, right? So this is what we're looking at as far as where we want everybody to be. Melee naturally is going to be up here, and then the range is going to be throughout this section here, okay? And you just want to make sure that you have a 5-yard spread. This is critical, maybe more. You'd have to look up the mechanic because I haven't seen it in a couple of days as far as looking at it. But when he does Nova and it comes out as big circular attack, everybody needs to be 5 to 8 yards apart, for example, so you're not blowing them up. Now, you can use defensives during Nova, and I would recommend that. Melee, what you have to do is you guys got to spread. Seriously, got to go here, got to go here, got to go here. You know, stay away from the range naturally, and everybody just like what you'll hear is like Nova in 5, right? Nova in 10, something like that. And when we call it out at that point, you need to make sure that you're set and you've got good distance and you're staying on the target, okay? So this is our positioning, and this is what we want to look like as far as how we're going through it. Now, how are we going to deal with the aberration, right? Watch the video at like 10 minutes, 10 and a half minutes when the aberration casts. The aberration now during phase 4 ends up taking damage and then dying. Upon dying, it explodes into 6 to 7 little ones, okay, that do damage in their own right. Not only AoE, but single target. So what it does is it puts on the tank now. I think at one point, right before I died, I was at like 5 to 6 stacks on the debuff. I had the boss hitting me because at that point, Ice was over here trying to deal with the MOC properly. And I had all those ads on me. Maybe there was like, 1 or 2 still left at that point also. And the boss were all attacking me at that point. So I was having like 7 or 8 total ads on me at one point. And that's just too much damage. So here's how we need to adjust involving that, right? Let me clean this up in this section up here just so that you can kind of get an idea. Right, there we go. We'll get that all cleared up. This is what the form is going to look like. Everybody knows, so it's not really that big of a deal to keep it up. I'll take that down too. And I just want us to deal with all that there. Okay, so boss is here. Aberration is spawned. Tanks are working it. Range is in here. Melee's in here. We're all kind of flip them all. Dude, that's your melee. And that right there is your range. Range is in the box in the shape that we designed before. Okay. The aberration dies, right? And then all of a sudden, instead of it being one thing, it's a bunch. So here's how we're going to deal with it, right? Aberration spawns. We purposely get both of them to be between us and the melee and range that are attacking it in the rectangle that we want to create, right? And then we need single targets. So when aberration comes out, right, and it's by itself, boss or not, priority, all right? Single target, damage into it, okay? Now, upon the aberration dying, and we'll call them the mini-me's, right? The mini abs, right? The mini-me's, when they spawn, okay? When they spawn, there's going to be 6 to 7, 8 of them. I'm not sure how many. That's when you go into cleave action, okay? Until they are all dead also, regardless of mechanics, all right? If there are many ads up, we need to do full cleave action and multi-target as much as possible until they're gone. Remember, by doing this, the boss is taking damage, all the ads are taking damage, we're lighting up the amount of damage that's present going into the tanks, especially during the time periods that we're having to rotate and whatnot. So this is really important that we kind of, take care of that as fast as we can. When the minis go down, that means we're back on boss, okay? So priority, 1, aberration upon spawning, single target damage. Then priority 2 for DPS, the minis are up, we go to cleave action and we start multi-targeting and blowing up as much as we can, as fast as we can. 3rd, minis are dead, boss, okay? And that's how we want to make sure that we're focusing on it consistently. And that's going to put us into a position where this is how you're going to rotate through it as the mechanics are going off consistently, okay? So again, 1, aberration, single target. Once it despawns and blows up, becoming the minis, then the minis get cleaved until dead. Until dead. We have to lighten them up as much as possible until they're gone. And then boss. Now, the way I was looking at it, until we really fine-tune this process, it looks like there's going to be a lot of cleave. Like there's going to be tons of this. And if you look at logs, Boom commented on this, Taldo's commented on this, a few other players too, is that statistically during the end phases, Kashnar is another one, that multi-target attacks own during this phase 4, because of the amount of damage that's being presented consistently. Okay, so that's what we want to make sure we do with all of that there. And then for the Nova, again, make sure that you're 5 yards apart. Melee on the Nova, make sure that you spread and just get away, or get some distance. Use a defensive also, especially for our first couple of attempts where we break into it and the Nova occurs. Let's try to minimize total damage that's going out, so that way the healers can sustain everybody and we can really work on the fundamentals. Phase 4, there's a lot going on, a lot of action, a lot of different explosions and positioning and adjustments that we need to make. But this is the way that I'd like for us to approach it. So if you have any comments, please post it below on either the YouTube channel, or I'm going to link it on Facebook also. And then I'll be streaming on Twitch from here forward till we raid the imp fight at 13% wipe. So that way you can take a view at it there too, or you could view it at YouTube. So I appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. I hope that I hit up everything that we really needed to adjust to. And like I said, any additional points, let me know in future videos. I'll add it. So again, VHR, great job. Let's keep focused on what we're doing. Let's get ready for some mythical kills. Let's get this kill on him tonight, okay?